Hello and welcome back to the Hyperspace Podcast. My name is Sam, and as always, I'm joined by my lovely co-host. It's Mr. Michael Gersh. Michael, how are you doing?
I'm good. Another episode of the Star Wars show we're both enjoying.
Exactly. No, completely right. In this episode, we're going to be going through episode 4 of the Bad Batch Cornered. We're going to be breaking it down, sharing things that we saw, we noticed. But to be honest, we don't have really much to say about this episode, though I think we both can agree that we both really enjoyed it. What were your general thoughts on this episode?
We're going in this Mandalorian direction. I think we talked about it last episode, and it really has that feel, but is very different as well. It does it differently, but it is somewhat following that formula of go to this planet, get stuck, then do this thing for the money, right? Or like repair the ship. It's falling into that, which is not bad. And I think the fact we're getting so many episodes, a 16 episode show, it suits this longer style much better.
Yeah, I agree. I did mention that I thought it would lean towards a Mandalorian like plot, and it's I don't know. It's slightly worrying me because I don't want it to be like a. It is. There's definitely differences, but I also don't want it to be just the Mandalorian cartoon. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Something I had been thinking about, although I feel it does it so differently, and certainly with Omega, I think she's treated a lot better than Grogu, as in the stuff they can do with her is much better than what you can do with basically a baby, right?
mm,
There's a lot more possibilities with what they can do with her as a character, and I think that's where the show differentiates, and also the characterization of those looking after her is very different.
yeah, no, completely. But I'm not sure how many more episodes I could bear with of just crash land on a planet, do some wandering about, get in trouble, fix the ship, leave. I mean, that's the structure of so many episodes of Mandalorian and Bad Batch.
I feel like it's going to start turning into a different direction when they have a thing to do. But I think the issue is they don't know what they're. I think they're going to get, like in the Mandalorian, it's going to be somewhat similar to the Mandalorian in the Mandalorian, they once he figures out, he needs to bring the baby to the Jedi, right? He kind of knows what he's doing. It's just unfortunately they did continue the crash land on a planet. Nope, this is the wrong place. Like even Ahsoka's like, no, I'm not dealing with this. Go somewhere else. And you're just like, oh, come on. With the Mandalorian a little bit, but I think this will be slightly different when it gets to that point. If that makes sense, I think it will. I think we know Rex is going to be in the show. We know there's this desert planet we were talking about, and we don't know what's going to happen there. I wonder if that's the turning point of the show, where it's less like this because they don't know what they're doing really. They're
Yeah.
kind of just wandering aimlessly to avoid the Empire, like in Mando.
Yeah, that they did mention they were looking for a place to hide, but yeah, let's move on to like break it, like going in chronological order of what happened. So it starts off there, looking for a place to hide, but have no food, rations. Ship is also being tracked, so they have to land on the nearest planet, which is Pantora, and Pantora has been mentioned before several times in Clone Wars, but was never visited. What do you remember story wise around the people of Pantora and the planet itself?
There was a few episodes where they were very important. The Pantoran, was it the chairman? I can't remember his name. The chairman of Pandora was really important for a couple of episodes. I remember that, and there was that episode on the snow planet or the snow moon. That the Pantorians had quarrels with the natives, and there was a bit of colonialism there. Yeah, I think you said it was the first appearance, right? I think maybe we've seen a shot of the like planet, but we've not seen anything more than that. We might have seen a cutaway shot or something, but I think that's if we have, that's it. I don't think we even have had that. But yeah, it's in that I think there was the episode where the chairman and his daughter, the chairman's daughters were kidnapped and held for ransom as well. and that's the one I remembered. And yeah, Ahsoka has to go and rescue them basically from the Trade Federation. So they've been important in a few places, but it's nice that they're doing this where they're exploring these planets we've heard about and we haven't seen yet. I don't know what were you thinking when we saw Pandora?
Yeah, no, it's always good to self-reference yourself. So like referencing back to a different series and like the people of that planet have been, as you said, involved in the show and have had some key episodes that have explored interesting ideas like colonialism, as you said. But it was nice to actually go to that planet and see what life was like on that planet. And yeah, you mentioned the snow episode on Auto Plutonia. And yeah, it was good because before that we'd only seen a few people of that planet, and it was very diverse. Despite you have the Plutonians, it was a very or Pantorans. It was very diverse. Moving on to more of the breakdown, we have a character callback from The Mandalorian, as this episode is very centered around Fennec Shand, who is voiced by the same person from The Mandalorian, which is nice because I know one of your favorite characters, Michael's Ahsoka, and you still find it a bit jarring going from Ashley Eckstein's Ahsoka to who are the live action Ahsoka.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not that it's bad, it's just it's different. And I think especially when you do this thing where you're bringing live action characters to animated, especially with in that case where she's on the contract from like we said with the Mandalorian, everything's multi-show contracts, I think, for a lot of the actors anyways. So where you have those contracts, it's probably worth using with people because you have them on that multi-show contract, especially I think Ahsoka is on a multi-show contract, right? It makes sense for those characters to be used like this. Yeah, it's good, and we knew that she was an Imperial sniper, right? And so we can kind of imagine she's working for the Empire to hunt Omega, right? Or
Yeah,
potentially some other source.
yeah.
We don't know yet, but
I have a different theory, but I'll mention it. I'll mention it later in the episode. But yeah, just something that's not really relevant. If Ahsoka does appear in this, it's very unlikely. It's very unlikely, but if she does, who is she going to be? Who would you want her to be voiced by?
Ashley,
Really?
Ashley, it's Ashley. I think I told. I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, but we talked about the Ahsoka book, and I might actually mention it again because there's a few things that parallel in this episode. On Pandora, we saw some stuff, and that book is the audiobook is narrated by Ashley Eckstein. So as far as I'm concerned, like with it, she's the voice. I'm okay with Rosario Dawson being the live action portrayal, but they should not do Rosario Dawson for Bad Batch. I don't think the fandom would care, but I would care. Like I think a lot of the fans would also feel it's a bit of a like they kind of it just seems like a bit of a harsh thing to do. So like Ashley, because she is this character and she loves this character, and there's a reason why we like this character is because of that portrayal. It makes sense the live action may have swapped, but for this, it's just we shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah. It is tough because they had Ashley Eckstein and she was great and but then they've moved on to Rosario Dawson. So going back to Ashley Eckstein it's like you've now got Rosario Dawson. Would you go back? But at the same time, Ashley Eckstein's voice is closer to because Bad Batch is continuing on from Clone Wars, and you've just had Ashley Eckstein doing Clone Wars. I think it would make sense if she was in this series, which, to be honest, I don't think she will be. But if she does make some surprise Luke Skywalker-like a Mandalorian appearance, then I think it should be Ashley Eckstein. Yeah, I agree.
I think that it would be less if one of the things was an issue that you might have been thinking was obviously they might not want to have two Ahsokas hired at the same time. We know the Mandalorian's been in the works for a long time, and season 2's probably been made before the Clone Wars season 2 was, or similar time. So I doubt that's an issue so much as anything else. You know, it makes sense if there'd be, you know, contract issues with having Ashley and Rosario Dawson, but I don't think that's the case for the voice acting and stuff.
Yeah. Moving back to, after that big tangent, moving back to the episode, we get a bit more of the Empire taking control of the galaxy.
It was really interesting seeing that, and the celebration after the Clone Wars, because we didn't get to see a celebration after Clone Wars, did we? We haven't actually seen anyone celebrate the Clone Wars is more or less over. I think there's the Outer Rim sieges, but we haven't actually seen anything of that. So as far as everyone else is concerned, it's not in the Outer Rim. The war is over, and it's like, it's strange because it's basically like an Empire Day celebration as well, because it's like, which is the thing I was going to talk about with the Ahsoka book and also Rebels, is this basically Empire Day is what we saw, and it's nice that it's mirroring this, but it's also horrifying to see the clones there.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
We're two big Clone Wars fans.
Yeah, yeah, as you said, especially after all been through Clone Wars, we love Clone Wars. Seeing these we mentioned this in a previous episode, but seeing these clones turn into almost mindless zombies and just serving the Empire without a second thought, because that's how they've been programmed, is really sad to see. And yeah, it's so weird seeing people celebrating the Empire, and it's kind of like, you won't be celebrating for not much longer.
The other thing we didn't talk about when we talked about Pantora is they're aliens. They're not humans, the Pantorans, and it's weird to see non-humans celebrate the Empire, especially after what we know it becomes. It basically just becomes this very human-centric thing, and you kind of see it, like, even Thrawn, people like look at the art he collects and like dismisses it as like you know, this like primitive, disgusting, you know, art that he has because it's from all these alien worlds, whereas he actually appreciates it. And I don't know, it's very you know, topical at the moment with, like, you know, he's basically he's gone and ransacked these from other cultures and stuff. Anyways, it's, so that's a big tangent though, but it's just interesting seeing you know, the point of view of the citizens who we haven't actually seen celebrate the Empire yet.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. It's just the Empire. It's we see it from such a perspective that it's always so bad, but then in the Bad Batch, they're giving you this perspective that some people are celebrating them, just saying the war is over, the Empire are here. They think that the Empire are going to do good, and to be honest, they did some not necessarily good, but they kept order, and from some people's perspectives, they were quite good in terms of yes, they were occupying a planet, and sometimes they I say sometimes they did murder people, but they certainly did. There were certainly some positives from the Empire. They weren't all bad.
I think it depends as well on which part of the galaxy you're in. If you're in that inner core, you know, near Coruscant, or, you know, not, I think Naboo has a pretty shit time of it, but if you're in that sort of inner core area, it's actually quite good for you because you're no longer, then the Clone Wars is over. You're no longer funding this military. I mean, you are, but, you know, it's not the same. It's now to maintain order rather than to fight a war. You're no longer funding the big clone project, which people hated as well. The people hated the clones, and we saw it in the Clone Wars, where like in that episode with was it Fives? Yeah, with Fives, where he goes to that clone bar. They like hate that normal citizens hate them. That's why they have clone bars, and they're like normal people don't go to these bars. And it's like it's just something that makes sense, like you said. People were like certain people were happy, and it worked for certain people, just not for everyone, unfortunately. I guess.
Yeah, no, completely. Back to the episode. We see Echo get sold. He meets some droids. George Lucas probably loved it, as as we were talking beforehand, and What was his favorite episode from
Oh,
Clone Wars?
I've heard, and I think he said it, is that "A Sunny Day in the Void" was his favorite episode, which is the one with the droids that steal the planet and then they crash land and they meet Gregor.
Yeah,
That I think it was one of the episodes from the arc, right? And it kind of reminded me of that as well. Like, like this one sort of normal character in Echo has to like wrangle up these droids.
yeah. No, I can kind of see it. That's we see Fennec versus Hunter. I don't think Hunter really realized how strong Fennec was.
I feel like it was a little bit of an unfair fight as well because he wasn't like
Ooh,
he had his vibro knife and that was it. So for him, he's not. I know he's good with a vibro knife, but he's not in his armor and shit. So like, it's not that it was that unfair. It was just a tiny bit unfair. I think he would have held his own a bit longer. But we do just see how crazy good Fennec Shand is because we saw it in The Mandalorian, but it's different when she's actually fighting these like badasses. Basically, it's the
yeah,
Bad Batch. They're awesome, right? And we see her like we'll talk about it later when it happens, but she like holds her own really well,
yeah.
and
No,
just
completely.
yeah.
And well, after they fight, Omega kind of gets away, and she's been chased by Fennec. But then, as you mentioned, that it was an unfair fight against Hunter. Wrecker finds Omega, and their dynamic is just so adorable. I
I
love it.
was,
But
I was going to talk about that, but we'll talk about the fight first. We'll talk about the
yeah,
fight first.
like Wrecker, as you said it was an unfair fight because Hunter wasn't in full armor. Wrecker was in full
Wrecker's
armor,
full
and he
armor.
got
He's
taken down in one move.
Yeah, he like fully is like prepared to like knock her out, and then she just trips him up, and he like hits a pipe and shit, and he just get it's just that I think that was the Hunter fight. I think Hunter anyways would have been is more suited to fighting her, hence why the fight was tiny bit unfair because otherwise it would have gone on for too long. I'm not saying that Fennec couldn't have done it. I just think it would have been it would have been a far more equal fight. It would have been over in like 6-7 moves. But yeah, one move for Wrecker. I was expecting some like somewhat more drawn out fight, but you just see him like swing, miss, and then that's it.
Yeah,
Uh, the dynamic between Omega and Wrecker. He's really like he really has taken to this big brother role we talked about last episode. Like he's like fully embraced it. Like he just picks her up and carries her.
oh yeah, I know. It's I love them together, and I don't want anything to happen to Wrecker. But another blow to the head, I think it's foreshadowing something.
Oh, I didn't. Oh God, I didn't think about. I haven't actually thought about that because we talked about it last episode. Like I wonder if that's going to happen or whether they're just making us, slightly paranoid. Like especially last episode, like the fact that he made a little bit of a scene over the head injury. I
Mm.
do wonder whether that was just so he could do the room for her, or if there was this. That's the other thing we didn't see this episode, which I was going to talk about again, but we might as well talk about it now, which is we didn't see any of the Empire, like the I guess Tarkin's perspective this episode, like
Mm.
we did last episode. I guess the pacing didn't need this injection that the last episode did because of the nature of it. It was slower, but we don't know what's going on at Camino at the moment and how the program's progressing. And I saw on the internet, I saw a side by side comparison of the armor next to the Death Trooper armor, and it's remarkably similar.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's for a reason, and if that's the direction that elite stuff takes. And if so, then that's kind of a reference to Rogue One as well.
Yeah. No,
Like you said, they kind
completely.
of referenced their self with that armor, and I had thought about it. I was like, it kind of looks like that armor, but when I see them side by side, it's really similar.
Mm. Yeah, no, I agree. They do look very similar to Death Troopers. A lot of people were mentioning that. I've seen a lot of people, as you said online, talk about that. Towards the end of the episode, you have this really cool scene over flying scene over the planet of Pantora, and that was definitely. I'm pretty certain that was a callback to Attack of the Clones. because there's a bounty hunter. They're basically chasing like the good guy is chasing the bounty hunter, and Fennec's very similar to the bounty hunter in
Oh yeah. I can't remember the name.
Attack of the Clones. Yeah, I don't remember the name either. And
One of Django shoots at the
yeah,
end.
one of
The poison
Django's.
darts.
Yeah, and that was a very succeed. Hunter does a bit of GTA, nicks a speeder, and goes flying after Omega, and that was a really cool scene. Of course, in the end, Hunter uses that explosive which he couldn't sell, and what Wrecker didn't want to get rid of. So I kind of like that little callback. I thought that was quite fun.
It was you talk about Wrecker. He it's quite funny when he sees the police come by and he says, "I'm missing all the action." I don't know. It was a little shock, but it's one of those things. It really builds up his character a little bit. With even though that's a small line, it's quite funny because he's like really upset about him missing out on the thing, and he missing the explosion as well. But yeah, that chase was it was just amazing, and I also the other thing we saw is the dynamic between Hunter, like is fully like the dad now.
Yeah.
You just see him like so concerned. I think this episode I think we'll say is like a bit of an Echo episode, especially with all the droid stuff. He got a bit more spotlighting, and I think he's needed that because I think the reason he's been sidelined a little bit is because he had so much development. Like he has enough development to have had his own show in the Clone Wars. Like I think he had like a good 10 episodes or something where it's about him and like Domino Squad and was it Rookies the episode he was in. Rookies. And there was the episode on Camino he was in.
He's in so many episodes. Like he was in so many episodes of Clone Wars.
Citadel, which is the other one, that whole arc, there was like 3 episodes. Anyways, I think that might be why he's been sidelined so much. I don't know about Tech in this episode had a bit more spotlighting, a bit of banter between him and Wrecker a little bit. But I hope they move in the direction of spotlighting those two because they kind of feel a bit left out so far, which is fine. I understand why, because Wrecker's this big character. They're going to spotlight him, and Hunter is the main character, really. Him and Omega are the main characters. So it makes sense it's those three. But I hope they shift a little bit to highlight Echo and Tech since we haven't seen much of them.
Yeah, you mentioned Echo there and Wrecker's line, which you thought was funny. I thought there were a few. There was another good line which I thought when Echo got sold and he wasn't happy, he was really annoyed by how cheaply he'd been sold by it. And then when he escapes, he just leaves and goes, "You got me for a bargain." He was still visibly annoyed about how much he'd been sold for.
You know what's funny? You say that, and I was gonna say about that at the end because I'd written it down. It was so funny. Like the way he walks away, and he just it's just the way he says it. The way that line is delivered is so good. And I don't know if we talked about last episode, but Bradley D. Williams, Bradley D. Baker, Bradley D. Baker is just it's D. Bradley Baker. Sorry, my brain. He really does steal. He is the show entirely. The level of talent of that man is ridiculous, especially as he does the scenes to himself. It's not like he records each of the characters separately. No, he does the scene. Yeah. When he records in a studio, which is so ridiculous because he's swapping between all those characters who have the same voice but sound so unique. Like when you hear Echo, you know it's Echo. If you hear Tech, you know it's Tech. If you hear Hunter, you know it's Hunter, even though Hunter and Echo are somewhat similar. There's so much and Wrecker, you know it's Wrecker because it's Wrecker, right? But it's so different, and they're able to he characterizes them so well, and he does all the other the regs basically.
Yeah, no, completely. Going back to the flying scene, as you said, it's really cool. Another thing I noticed, I said there were lots of parallels between this and the one in Attack of the Clones, but there was also flying side by side with them was a taxi, which was what Anakin and Obi-Wan used to chase the bounty hunter. And there's a taxi which was pretty much identical. I noticed it straight away. That was flying by, and I was just like, "That's such a cool little callback." That's such a
I
cool
hadn't
little
actually,
Easter egg.
I'd clocked the taxi, but I hadn't actually thought about it being a callback to Attack of the Clones. But like you said, they've really referenced quite a lot of stuff in this show already, whether that's like Fennec Shand or like small things like that, which is nice. And we're both prequel fans. We can say it, like the prequels are good. People can shit on them all they want. They're not the best movies ever made, but they are good Star Wars films. There's a reason we like all this content they do in this period, because they really have some interesting stuff going on. But yeah, the chase was the explosion as well. They animated that so well.
Oh yeah,
The
that was
animation's gone
amazing.
so far since the start of the Clone Wars.
Well, I have a friend, Josh, who watched one episode of Clone Wars and just hated it, and he was just like, "Oh, it's just rubbish." And I got him to watch the Bad Batch first episode, and he was like, "Yeah, it's much better than Clone Wars." And I was like, "Well, of course it is. It's come the episode you watched was the first one in 2008. This is in 2021, or this was made in 2020. It's come so far, and it's developed so much."
I feel like it's not a big. I don't think it was that much of a. I think the style is exactly the same, or the level is the same as season 7. But we already knew it was going to be, because it was they knew that they were going to do this. And the 2 episodes, or 3, was it 3 episodes they had with the Bad Batch, was just a teaser for this. It must have been like, I know they were already made, or at least some of them. Like one of them was made. Was it some? Actually, I think all of them were made, maybe, because they were
Some of
the
them
unfinished
were.
episodes, right? But the reason why they deliberately picked those unfinished episodes to finish and like correct, and they added a few scenes or changed some scenes, was for this. It must have been. They definitely knew, and especially going and making the models for the characters, which is something I've not really considered. But if they make a model for a character, they would likely appear a few times in a show.
Yeah, most
You have to go
likely.
and spend all the time to make them. So, like, if we saw there's Rex, which means they've either reused him from the Clone Wars, or they've gone and done it up again, and he's going to be quite important in the Bad Batch, or at least in that one episode, he's going to be quite important. We'll have to see how the show goes, really, and see how he's included.
Yeah, that's kind of where the episode ends after the fight scene. Hunter gets Omega, and then they leave, and then they fly off, and Fennec wants to is basically hunting Omega still, and that's definitely not the last we hear of her. But I've got a theory, all right? I have got a theory.
On why she's being hunted.
I've written 3. There are 3 questions in this episode, and that is who hired Fennec, why does Fennec want Omega, and who is Omega, which is still no one really knows.
We said about that last episode, and
yeah, but I think that Fennec was hired by Boba Fett, and
that would make sense.
And this will help their dynamic ready for the show. I think that if they've got more history together, then it kind of builds up this development.
You know what? I hadn't actually thought about that, because we did talk about. I think I mentioned it last week about. I think Boba Fett will be in this show because they want the DNA of a Jango Fett clone, and a good one at that. So an early one, and he was probably one of the. I think he was the first clone they did for the deal, right? To have him as a template. So that would make a lot of sense if he's like involved in this show, and they're involved together for the Boba Fett series, which means that the Boba Fett series isn't just a spur of the moment thing. They knew that Boba Fett was going to be this big character in the like 1 or 2 episodes he was in I mean, it explains why they teased it so much, like on Tatooine. They when I watched that with my dad, I was like, I was saying, like, that's him, because he's not wearing the armor and shit, and like his face is so scarred and stuff. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be something to look forward to then, if both of them are going to be involved and they're hyping up this show, and it'd make a lot of sense for them to have history.
Exactly. No,
but they don't. Agree. Yeah, they didn't seem to know each other in The Mandalorian, though. That's the thing I wonder.
I think
not so much.
I think they had a dynamic where they could have known each other. But yeah, to continue my theory, I think that Boba Fett hired Fennec, but Boba has been hired by the Kaminoans to bring back Omega, as they want an unaltered clone, and they want her to be the template for Phase 3. What they mentioned, you thought that would be Boba. I think that's going to be Omega. She mentioned before that she's had lots of tests on her, and she was a medic. She was like medic, and some people are theorizing that she might have force healing. I'm not sure on this theory, but there are a lot of
We've heard
people
a lot of
speculating.
we've heard a lot about force. I've heard a lot about force sensitivity with her, and I think that's because she has a certain level of precognition and like she's aware of things that may like that in the same way Hunter is. But I don't know if she's an unaltered clone because I mean if she's a clone of Jango Fett, we're sure of that. That's the one thing we're sure of because that's what Tech had said, which means that she is an altered clone, at least a little bit. So it may be the case that she's unaltered enough, or the DNA's deteriorate is not didn't she might be an early clone and it's not deteriorated, but she is definitely an altered clone, I think.
Yeah,
So it would make your theory would make sense if that was what they were going for Phase 3, and she's like the the unaltered version of that template, or she's got because the DNA hadn't deteriorated with her when she was cloned. Because I'm guessing she's early-ish.
mm,
Because
yeah,
she's like 8 or something, and I think clones. It's hard with clone aging, right? It probably means that she was like later in the war, but not that late in the war. I'm guessing.
yeah. Well, Boba Fett is also still quite young in this. He would be like a teenager, I think. So, but he still had so much power as a teenager. We saw in Clone Wars, he got into altercations with Mace Windu and came out alive, unlike his father didn't. So more
Lost his
powerful than
head.
Django. Exactly. He kept his head intact. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I think that Omega definitely has something quirky, whether it's force sensitivity or it's something else. They definitely think that. I think the Kaminoans think she is the future, and she is what will save this contract with the Empire to produce clones on a mass level.
Yeah, I like I said, I had said that I thought Fennec Shand was working for the Empire because things said in the Mandalorian like she was a ex-Imperial sniper, right? So I was wondering if that was the case. But what you say makes a lot of sense. If she's working effectively for the Kaminoans, even if it's through Boba Fett, right? That would make a lot of sense. Yeah, I wonder what's like you said, who is Amiga? What is the deal? That's like I feel that's a bigger question because if we had that answered, we'd probably know who had hired her and why. If that makes sense. I think that's the big question: is what is her like freaky gift? I guess if she has one. If she doesn't, then why?
Yeah.
Like
Why
why does
why is
she?
she being hunted throughout the galaxy if she's just a normal clone? Like surely they want someone with more power that they can kind of copy and make the next phase 3 or whatever more powerful. But I think this is leading to her getting captured, something, maybe her blood getting taken or something, and there will be a
Like
Kamino, there will be a
Mando.
battle on Camino.
Mando. This is just the more you say it, the more it's just going to be the Mandalorian. I think
Yeah,
if they're like taking her blood, she's basically just Grogu that talks.
yeah. She's Grogu with like a New Zealand accent. But yeah, it's very interesting, and I can't wait to see what it goes. But I think that wraps up our discussion on this episode. As always, thank you for watching. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Let us know, who do you think Omega is? Why is Fennec hunting her down? Who hired Fennec? Let us know if you have any of the answers to our questions, and we'll be back for the next episode breakdown, which is episode 5. The show's hotting up, so many questions, and yeah, just let us know what you think. But yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you, Michael, for joining me as always.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, we'll see you next time. And may the force be with you.